Part 42. Come on, join us. Please like and subscribe, then relax and enjoy. Since the East Ham prison farm breakout, seen as a direct challenge to Texas and Uncle Sam, the laws were tracking Bonnie and Clyde like prey, trying to figure out a way to get them without anyone else getting hurt or in the way. A price they placed on Clyde's head, some made no secret they would prefer him dead, even suggesting doubling the reward if he was killed, and cutting it in half if he was taken alive. A violent showdown was inevitable, they said. They figured Clyde was running state lines, using the state line rules to get away, frequently changing his license plate signs, all making them more elusive prey, but the laws vowed to get them someday. Peace officers all over the country harboring outrage with a dose of titillation about Bonnie, that cigar-smoking gun moll they were chasing. Then, after the April Easter shooting of the 2 motorcycle patrol officers at Grapevine, followed shortly after that by another officer down at Commerce, Oklahoma, the chase now got really hot. Pause to read. Bonnie must have read this newspaper article, for she wrote a stanza in her last poem, The Trail's End, that went, "They don't think they're too tough or too desperate. They know that the law always wins. They've been shot often before, but they do not ignore that death are the wages of sin." Outraged, investigating ever-current reports, with numerous sightings of Bonnie and Clyde reportedly seen simultaneously all over the place, but those 2 will-o'-the-wisp bandits could they nowhere trace. Okay, kids, no necking till we get 'em. Pause to read. It was one epic big game of hide-and-seek and catch-me-if-you-can, laws scratching their heads over their maps, wondering how they'd vanished when they'd blocked every road with their traps. Knowing that Bonnie and Clyde were reading newspapers, newspaper editors, possibly in collusion with authorities, were publishing articles like these, hoping to sow discord among Bonnie and Clyde and the Barrow gang. This part about Bonnie's husband Roy Thornton no doubt got Bonnie and Clyde talking. Quote, Hamilton also was said to have lost interest in Barrow because of the fact that Bonnie Parker became an associate of the desperado. After her husband Roy Thornton was imprisoned, Hamilton and Thornton ran around together a few years ago. Thornton knew a lot about burning holes in bank vaults. They renewed their acquaintance in prison, and got Bonnie reminiscing about this blast from the past, involving her husband Roy Thornton and a former boy sheriff of Dallas, Schuyler Marshall Jr. Quote, Pa identified Scales yesterday as one of the kidnappers. Besides Marshall, the others charged were Roy Thornton, Bud Mace, and 2 men identified only as Mac and Bob. Bud Mace was the brother of Fred Mace, who was the husband of Bonnie's sister Billy. And no doubt had Bonnie and Clyde reminiscing about the beginning of their gang way back in 1932 with Ralph Fultz. From the article published April 25th, 1932, quote, "The officer surprised Fultz and two companions, those were Bonnie and Clyde, one a woman near Maybank after they had attempted to rob a store. Fultz admitted complicity in the kidnapping of J.T. Taylor, Chief of Police of Electra, and 3 other persons 10 days ago." Bonnie and Clyde were keenly reading any newspaper articles they found about themselves. They could see that death was close. Bonnie started writing her poem, The Trail's End. But this article, published on May 3rd, really got Clyde. Just imagine, quote, "Hamilton very pointedly called attention to the fact that Barrow hid in the back of the car while the bank was being robbed, and said unflattering things about Barrow's nerve, investigators learned. Oh my!" As Raymond had just been captured, Clyde set about composing a letter to Raymond. And in this same article, either a spectacular foretelling of the future by the writer of this article, or a leak of confidential information, if only Bonnie and Clyde the truth of this had known. Quote, "Of the 4 liberated, Methven remains with Barrow, according to investigators, and Methven is the boy who may spell Barrow's doom." And that was published on the 3rd of May. Wow! To try catch Bonnie and Clyde, the authorities were using many angles of attack. A big focus was the Barrow service station on Eagle Ford Road. Right there, living at the Star service station, in Clyde's own cousin, Bailey T., the Bureau of Intelligence had the perfect mole. In regular clandestine meetings with a special agent for $4 a day, Bailey was passing on detailed notes, while at the same time a nosy neighbor just across the way was recording the comings and goings at the station and passing his notes on to a special agent for his few dollars a day. All the while, the sheriff's deputies and police were staking out the station by sight, often curb-crawling by, picking up persons of interest for questioning. The scene round the station sure was tight. Tapping telephones, the authorities recorded conversations, trying to get a tip. Keenly aware their phones were probably tapped, Kimi and Emma only spoke briefly and in code. Still, they just couldn't catch Bonnie and Clyde in time. But meanwhile, Old Man Ivy had established a line with Sheriff Henderson Jordan through a pal, John Joyner, a deal for Henry and a bounty for John in exchange for Bonnie and Clyde. End of Part 42. Come on, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. The next part is coming soon.